There we go. All right, you are good to get started.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We're officially live with the GoBundance Follow Your Passion series. I have Ramsay Adams here, and I'm Martin Eiden with GoBundance, and we're here in New York. I'm really excited about this because this is a quarterly event. I'm part of the tribe, I guess, that's mainly down in the Philly area that we go to every month, and there's a bunch of group of people here that, as we've expanded over this past year, we do stuff quarterly here in New York, and this is our first series, and I'm calling it the Follow Your Passion series because a lot of the GoBundance tribe here, they have a passion. There are a lot of self-starter people that want to do things. And I'm very honored today to have Ramsay Adams here, who's also Ramsay. I've also known you for probably.
I was trying to figure that out.
I remember being at your wedding. And how long you guys? I mean, it's been at least 20 years.
Yes,
or so, right?
I think 25.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So what's great with Ramsay is, and I really never had a chance to hear your whole evolution of all the things that you've done, right? But what's great with Ramsay is he has really two passions. Number one, very big tie to the Catskills region, upstate New York. He's founded, it's called the Catskill Mountain Keepers. We're going to get into that. It's a, environmental group to preserve the hills or the mountains, if you will, or serrated plateaus. I guess technically. Serrated plateaus. But I think what's great with what Ramsay does, it's, and then I'm an environmentalist myself, but you have a big tie-in on how to help the community as well, which I think is great. And then, which I also am really interested to kind of get into is you also founded the Catskills Brewing Company. And so I think they're both interrelated in a way. So what was first, Ramsay, or how did all this kind of evolve?
So thank you, Martin is just such a liver of life. So I understand exactly why I'm sitting here with you. This is, I mean, it's awesome, right? It's
right.
Like, life is something that you need to seize, or else it passes you by. And so that's one of the things that I think everybody needs to tackle every day. Is how do you continue to live in the moment with an eye towards the future.
Right.
And be able to pivot and shift. I mean, that's part of it is, you can change, people can change.
Right.
It's the myth that the people don't change or can't change. And so, my passion for the environment comes directly from my parents. My father is one of the grandfathers of the environmental movement in America, and founded the Natural Resources Defense Council, as well as the Open Space Institute. And he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor for his work on the environment. And he was always a glass half full guy. And that's the difference because these are really challenging issues. Our oceans, our air, fires, climate across the board. It's a pretty overwhelming issue. And if you don't see solutions and steps forward that you can take, and that you inspire other people to take,
right?
Then
it's overwhelming. Yeah.
And so I grew up in this that you fight to win, and when you lose, you move on to the next fight. And so part of what they instilled in me. My father grew up on a dairy farm in the Catskills, a very small Irish, chickens and a couple of cows kind of scratch out a living farm. And he sort of broke out of there, very poor Irish immigrants in a little farm in Sullivan County in a town called Calicut Center. And he went on to Michigan State on football scholarship, and then he went on to Duke, Duke Law School, and then became passionate about protecting the environment using law and science. So he built our RTC that way. And so, so much of where my, it just built into my DNA that we have to fight this fight. And anybody who's sitting on the sidelines is, at best, not helping, and at worst, contributing to the this problem that's growing and is existential.
I just want to interrupt for 1 second, Ramsey. So I think in a lot of us with GoBundance, we're all fathers here. So it sounds like you have a good father presence showing you, a path.
Absolutely. And I have father issues like everybody else. And I have a 12-year-old son, definitely is going to have father issues like me. But, on that front, it was, it was really inspiring. And, and it made me appreciate the sense of place. And sense of place is really important, I think, for, the way we are in our culture, this time, to have a sense of place. With COVID, it's even made it more interesting because people sort of hunkered down and sort of had to define a sense of place by force, and that's been interesting. But my sense of place was the Catskills. I fell in love with it. I actually grew up, in the Hudson Valley in a town called Garrison. That's where my family lived after my dad broke out of the Catskills when my grandparents lived there. So I've always had a place in the
right across from
Catskills.
West Point, right?
Yes, Garrison's right across from it. So, but for me, the Catskills was always that special place. And it's, I think, the most beautiful place. I've been all over and I've had a lot of options to be places. And I just drove around America with my family, just got back on a 5-month Griswold style family.
That's true.
All over.
Again, there's another example,
Upstate
right?
New York, Catskills is amazing. So the passion for protecting that place, and it's something that I could do. I had a friend, Jed Albert, some of you may remember Jed, but he said to me, you can either be a small fish in this big pond or be a big fish in the small pond. Go do something big up in the Catskills, because I was trying to decide.
Right, and so I just wanted to go back to that. So you had the background of your father being a big environmentalist with NRDC. And so was it in your 20s you were trying to figure out your path, or when did this kind of come to
I was
to a head for you?
I'm dyslexic and I'm colorblind and I've got learning disabilities.
But you matched today, Ramsey.
I wasn't sure. Do I? That's lucky. No, but so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I went to the University of Wisconsin. I just have a bachelor's degree. I never got a graduate degree. I came back to New York to play in a rock band with my brother.
Right.
And that's what I did. And so I worked for Johnny Versace. I was his personal deliverer of high-end couture to celebrities. And I worked at Versace at their flagship store and played in rock bands. I didn't know that.
I didn't know the Versace story.
And then I got a job working for a music manager.
Okay.
And I managed Chumbawamba. So I left Versace, and then so I got really into the music side.
Okay.
And that was really
this was all kind of like your mid-20s.
Mid-20s.
Okay, so this was your
in the West
exploring
Village,
years.
East Village, and I lived in played rock bands. I played every club. Sean and Marty have seen some of our crazy concerts. And then the weirdest part of the story of to get you to the next part is I got approached by my bassist, whose son-in-law was at Fox News at the very beginning, and they needed to build a website and all of that stuff.
Got it.
And so I got recruited because I built the Chumbawamba website. So I actually worked at Fox News right through 9/11 in the creative department, and then I became the music director of all of Fox programming.
Wow.
And I quit in protest. But I still have blood on my hands.
Right, fair enough.
I'll own up to it. Crazy important, and as I go into grad school, working for Roger Ailes and Fox News, pretty interesting stuff. 5 years I did that.
You're in.
And then I left and I worked for Fenton, which is a progressive public relations firm on environmental issues, and that's when I just sort of stopped, quit, and said I'm going to.
And you said, okay, so what was the turning point for you, where not turning point, but what was like enough of doing this, I want to make a mark, and how can I do this? But was there a specific moment, or was there
why I left Fox, or why I switched
to switching into Mountain Keepers? Like, how did that? What was your?
I had an epiphany at Fox News. I was part of the team that invented the whiz bang, which is the thing on all news now where there's like an alert and a big bell and a guy and it's a swish across the screen. We invented that at the graphics department at Fox. And I came to a realization that you could really change people's minds with the new internet, the new television, the whole thing as it was converging. I mean, it was all new to everybody. Nobody knew what was happening.
Right.
But it was happening.
Gotcha.
And I got really freaked out. And I was like, these environmental issues, are really so much more important than
flash news, but it's not really even really. Or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I know what you mean, but it was like.
So I got really freaked out at 25.
Okay.
And I said, this is crazy what I'm doing. And I'm good at this.
Right.
Too good at it. And so I want to do something. So I worked at David Fenton, who's a legendary progressive public relations person.
Okay.
One of the most famous. And I asked him if I could come work for him. He hired me, and I became the new media director at Fenton Communications. And we launched Move On together. Okay. And a bunch of other things. I was a big group. Sean, a number of interesting, cool projects.
Right.
And so I was sort of in this world of new media, progressives, aggressive progressives, working on things. People like Moby and folks like that. We're all trying to figure out what we're going to do about
what's the new thing.
The new
so you were surrounded by a bunch of creative people.
Tons of creative people.
Okay.
And so I was just swimming all around.
Okay.
I had a girlfriend that I met in college, and I was really angry that I met her because I was like, shit, I'm too young for this. But it was pretty much a fait accompli with her. Okay. And so we're still together, and we have children. I mean, we made
amazing woman.
We made it through. It wasn't easy. Right. But we did. And so, we started Catskill Mountain Keeper very specifically because I wanted to build 6 casinos, massive Las Vegas style casinos in the Catskills. Okay. And my dad said, use some of these, we have to start a campaign to stop this, do it. Got it. So just for clarification, there was this movement to build a bunch of casinos upstate, and you said they're going to legalize it. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It'll destroy the Catskills, destroy the Catskill Mountain. Got it. And how do I do this? Okay. I said we're going to fight the casinos. Everyone said it was a done deal. Okay. I remember the name. 6 at the old Forest Belt hotels all throughout the Catskills. There are going to be Native American casinos, each independent nations, and it was crazy. And it was just an absolutely crazy idea. But everybody was behind it. Every senator, every congressman, everybody. And so I partnered with. I stopped working at Fenton and took this on. Okay. And just to ask you, like, what captivated you to be so passionate about this? Or what was the turning point for like enough is enough? So the one of the things that I realized living in New York City, even as a crazy 20-something, was that I needed like open space, and I love the park systems, and I love, and open space, protecting land and open space, not even from a climate perspective at that point so much, but for a mental health and just like to escape that. An escape that, yeah. Right. And so the Catskills, is just this, again, I have this passionate, crazy love for the place. I mean, and so do you, because you we're on the side of that, yeah. And anybody who goes there, you realize it is the example of what we need all over the world, and all over and how you manage those resources is really important, and to destroy it by one bad decision. And it was a really unpopular one. So, I started Catskill Mountain Keeper because I was with a colleague and a friend, and we were talking, and he said to me, we can't keep doing this, like, fighting something, having the whole, win or lose, and then rebuilding that same structure again for something else. It's going to be power lines, it's going to be fracking, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. Right. We need, if we're going to do this and build a campaign to stop the casinos, we need to build a river keeper. And I was like, yeah, we need a mountain keeper. Got it. And just for a side note, for people who don't know what river keepers are, can you give, because are you still on the board? I am, yes. Okay. Quick summary about is the Hudson River Keeper was the first river keeper founded by World War II veterans that came back, and Hudson River was disgusting. So these tough-ass guys got in their boats and started, confronting polluters and bringing lawsuits, and that's, became a movement called the keeper movement. And now there's water keepers and river keepers and bay keepers all over the world. There's almost 200 of them in the United States alone. So, and that's basically, you have a boat, a captain, and a keeper, and you protect the waterways. Mountain keeper is the only land-based keeper. But we took the model
We took the model and took it to the hills. And a side note for people that are joining us on now, we're in a West Village apartment, and the owner just talked about how nice the river was.
Yeah, well, that's it. And how it changed.
A perfect segue.
The sense of place. It's back.
The highlight, by the way, is all based on the way it was with all the plants that originally were there.
Oh, it's a beautiful.
Yeah, we're talking about the highline.
The highlights.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, so again, I think this is smart. You had a cause, or not a cause, but you wanted to make, there was something that bothered you. You wanted to have a change. You wanted to have it not just be this fight, and then 3 weeks later or a year later it's going to be another fight. You wanted a foundation.
Yes,
to
because
keep
you
it,
needed to build a public
to keep going
campaign to fight this. This
Got it.
wasn't just legal. This was like, we needed to rally the troops to fight against this massive development.
Got it. That makes sense. And as opposed to starting something from ground up, you said, what is an existing structure
Exactly.
that I can use as a template? Which I
Exactly.
think is really great.
And
Right?
I called Bobby Kennedy and I said, Bobby, I want to start a mountain keeper. He said, I think that's a great idea. Called me back an hour later and said, they're not going to let you do it because of the name, and you're not a land-based, they don't do land. They do this. I said, well, and then that went on for a couple of weeks. He was frustrated. I was frustrated. I said, fuck it, we'll call it Mountain Watch.
Okay.
We're doing that.
Mountain Watch.
Then he called me back and said, never mind, we'll let you be mountain keeper.
Okay. Got it. And when did this start?
So this started 15 years ago.
Okay. Wow.
Exactly. 15 years. And so we built a grassroots group. We basically went on a listening tour, drove 6,000 square miles, bigger than the state of Connecticut. The Catskills is huge. It's got mountains, 35 over 3,500 feet. It's got the cleanest water in America. It's got the largest continuous forest in the in the United States, and that really runs all the way through from Pennsylvania up until.
Right. Well, there are a lot of people here from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so you know that vast forest. It's one of the most important ecological assets that that we have, and so we just went on a listening tour. And back to this sort of epiphany I had at Fox News. The Catskills are separated by hill and dale and mountain community, and they didn't have their own radio stations and TV shows or newspapers. So there's a Catskills serrated plateau, a mountains region, geological, geographic. There's an identity, but none of those people shared that identity. So if you went to where John lives, and then went over to Calicut on the Delaware, they shared nothing in common. No communication. So I did what probably the best thing I did was I built a massive email list. I robbed, stole, and plundered when it was still legal to do that.
Because you have the background.
And so, by the time I was done with that exercise, I built, 10,000 email list, and that grew and grew and grew. And so we became, a statewide powerhouse because we had 50,000 people who we were reaching to talk about our issues as we grew. And we stopped the casinos, and then the fracking fight happened, and that's really when Mountain Keeper
came into the next.
Relevant,
So how did so it seems like, as opposed to, which I think is great also with Mountain Keeper, if there's something that you don't like, you've also introduced on how to have gainful employment in other industries. Can you touch base a little bit on that?
Right. So, one of the fundamental challenges that we have when we're looking at these environmental issues, be it large-scale development or fossil fuel extraction, or the argument is always, well, it's jobs, and if we can't do this, what can we do? And that's a way for the industry, if it's fossil fuels, to basically say, this is the way it is.
Right.
We're just naysayers, we're just gonna go ahead and do this. And so,
Right.
we embarked on a major identity soul searching exercise at Mountain Keeper to figure out what the alternatives were. And those are Main Street economic development,
Right.
Eco-tourism and staycation tourism for the Catskills because of our unique relationship with New York City.
Right. It's only what, 2 hours,
And
two and a half
value
hours
add.
away.
Agriculture.
Right. So talk a little bit about, because I know you guys are
renewables.
helping a lot in agriculture
And
as well. And renewables.
So with agriculture, it's fascinating because the Catskills were always just basically the dairy. We were the dairy for New York City. All the trains were dairy trains. And they're cows that were small family farms. They've all, and that model's broken, not even worth discussing because it's so broken.
Right.
Small family dairy farms are, there were hundreds, there's 16 left in Sullivan County, and they're all, struggling, and so all the milk is coming from massive farms out in the Midwest and other places. So that just all this farmland, and
What are
nothing.
you gonna do?
What are you going to do? And
Right.
so this has been one of the most exciting things we've been able to do is to vision out in an ideal world what this farmland become.
Right.
And so you have high density, value added agriculture, fruits and vegetables, mostly vegetables,
Okay.
and that's a really effective, good thing.
And a good market is that
Great
they're
market.
the ones that come here
They're
to
the
the
ones
city
that are
for the
coming to
farmers
us.
markets,
And
which is
now
very huge.
We've got grass fed cattle.
Yep.
And so we're working a lot with big herds, helping them move across fields.
Okay.
People who own old farms and having them, be places that. So it's basically a whole restructuring of the agricultural opportunity because people want fresh. I mean, this gets to the other thing that I learned is branding. I looked at the situation and said, "What's the problem with the Catskills?" People think of the Catskills like dirty dancing, Woodstock, hippies smoking dope, but there's no real positives. There's no real positive identity for the Catskills. But look what Vermont did.
Right.
What did they do? Well, all of a sudden, you think Vermont, you think a spotted cow and a red barn, and you're going to buy them.
And no billboard.
And no billboard.
Right.
And you're going to buy their maple syrup and their cheese and that's because it's just. So we need to make the Catskills that. So when people see the name Catskills, they think healthy, local, good produce. And that's where the brewery came from. I was like, this is crazy,
And when did the brewery start? When did that idea come in?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay,
Yeah.
so basically, Catskill Mountain Keepers came up first.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you had some ways to have some new gainful employment. Was the farming thing, was that pretty much implemented by that time, or was that even?
Well, it's really ongoing. And the transformation is most profound right now coming out of COVID.
Right?
But it's happened. And so,
It has.
I've launched 5 farmers markets, one in Monticello, one in Liberty, one in Fallsburg, one in Calkin, and one in Narrowsburg.
Mhm.
And those are all markets that started really small. They're all big markets now.
Wow.
And that's just getting putting the energy and the passion behind launching them.
Right.
Then they run themselves. I don't do anything anymore.
Wow.
I just oversee some of the fiscal pieces of it. But it really is about creating a market. It's not that hard once you realize what you're trying to do. Make sure the farmers are there and make sure everyone knows that you can go there and buy fresh produce. And so those markets. So it's that kind of
Right. Well, I think what's great about that is the trend of quote unquote high quality fresh food, which all of us are into, right? And you saw that, and you helped the communities there change from the dairy farming model that they had is just non-existent right now. So how can we repurpose this land and do things and bring it in, and everybody wants high quality food.
One thing that we did do, which is pointed me to remind me, is I raised $200,000 from a wealthy individual,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys in the money world will get this, but even better than I ever got it. As a zero a loan with zero interest
Wow.
for farmers,
Okay.
up to $50,000.
Amazing.
But mostly it was in the 10 to 15 minutes for established farmers who were having trouble getting capital because they were maxed out on their
Other stuff. Wow.
But if they had this, they could build a hoop house, or, so it was specific. So that was our, the Catskill Mountain Keepers Agricultural Capital Access Loan Program.
Wow.
And we just, the guy was smart because he got his money back.
Right.
It was
it
like
was
his
established.
best investment because he felt good about it.
Right.
And we just facilitated it, and the bank agreed to do it.
Right.
And the Mountain Keeper secured the loan with the money that we had in our bank. He put the money up, and there it was.
That's amazing.
And then so that thing was, immensely important because it's an engine for,
renewable, right?
Yeah, and it's really like the people you want to invest in are the people who are doing it and can expand. And I learned the hard way. Everybody saw the movie, everybody read the book. Oh, I want to be a farmer and go with the Yeah, it's hard life. It's so hard to do that. So if you're going to expand and improve the agricultural situation, you want to go with the people who are already doing it and just need more capital so they can grow and expand and then train people and employ people.
All right. So just before we go into the Catskill Brew, does anybody have any questions at all with what he's done or how he grew this or thoughts or ideas? You don't have to.
I don't have a question, but I just want to comment that I'm very happy doing what you're telling because I have a
perspective. Very good tomorrow.
Of the Catskill, of big hotels.
Yeah,
And I never been there in this single gatherings, but I remember the stories. So it's very surprising for the best to hear all these things and really give me a desire to go there and visit.
Just hold on, just for everybody that's on now. So the question was, one of the audience members here just remembers the Catskills very much with the big hotels and movies and that type of thing.
And the
And how it's,
commercial.
right.
Commercial.
and how it's
Careful.
changed.
I will add one thing about the Catskills. You mentioned the water. Our water at our house is spring fed. There's no well. It literally runs down from the mountain. There's a hose and there's a pump that pumps it into the house. And it is a natural spring fed water. All of our water literally comes from the mountain.
The water in the Catskills is some of the finest in the world. New York City gets all of its drinking water unfiltered from 6 reservoir system. It's an engineering feat, like the 7 wonders of the world style. They created these massive reservoirs by damming valleys, and then they dug tunnels all the way from the Catskills to New York City. And that water is what you get, and that's why the pizza's so good. The bagels are so good.
Right.
It's just,
This is the Catskills.
and it's a replenishing water supply. It's not an aquifer, so it makes it, that's why New York City is here, because of the Catskills. And the water, you just couldn't have this without that.
And that was done in the 1890s.
That's it. Yeah, right. It began the process, but it was it's really crazy and beautiful. But the wildlife, and the environmental implications for all of New York City, so much is dependent on protecting the Catskills, and that's part of why I've been successful. Is that once you tell that story to politicians in New York City, they understand that you need to invest in protecting the Catskills, and you have to protect that to protect this. You can't afford to filter the water that's required to feed all of these people. I mean, it would be trillions of dollars. No one's got that amount of money to build a filtration system big enough to filter all. So water has to be pure and clean, and that means we need to keep it that way, and that requires advocates like Mountain Keeper on the ground
Keeping it going.
keeping it. Yeah.
So let's talk about the Catskills Brewery. So how did that idea evolve with you 5 years ago? You felt that was a need for your area or the employment? Because now, I mean, it seems like you're a trendsetter in all this stuff, right? Now there's a bunch of microbreweries all over the Catskills.
Yes.
And you're one of the larger ones. You have
We were the
some
first
franchises,
brewery
go ahead.
in the Catskills.
Got
in the
it.
park.
Okay.
And so, that's, and the reason, I thought of it as I was at a barbecue with some friends,
Okay.
And, you know, the Catskills is in this cycle of, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. So you see some kind of energy around the community, like, you know, Woodstock and Athens, Phoenicia, Catskill, Marysburg, Livingston Manor, Hunter, Wyndham, and all these towns have these sort of bursts and declines.
It's true.
And we were coming out of a burst and into a big decline about 5 years ago, and things were looking pretty grim again. You know, for main streets, you know, there were more Dollar Generals coming, less investment, and you know, things changed so fast, by the way. But that's where we were at. And I was like,
Right.
what we need here is a brewery. We need a Catskill brewery so people have something to do and come to when they come up to the Airbnbs and the bed and breakfast.
The
they've got
destination.
a destination. And,
Right.
You know, and so it was a very simple idea, and you know, I was surprised that I could get the name Catskill Brewery. And it happened that fast. I mean, it was. I was talking to three friends, and 2 of them are still my partners, or are my partners, became my
Okay.
partners. And you know, I was thinking back. One of the most interesting things I learned about it is that the branding theory I had is true. If you brand something like Catskills and tie it to things like really good beer
Right.
and beautiful places, then that's what people think of when they, and so, you know, I found that the brand of the Catskills is evolving to be something super positive that so many people, and I have a small part in it because of Catskill Mountain Keeper and Catskill
Right.
Brewery, you know,
Absolutely.
and now I see it everywhere. We're getting listed as the top destinations in the world over and over again. Through, you know, Time magazine yesterday. It's travel and leisure, and then they talk about Livingston Manor. They're talking about the Catskills. They're talking about Woodstock. But these are the top most beautiful places to visit in the world.
Right. It
And
has,
that was
it has
not
a research.
happened 10 years ago.
No.
Because people who come, the travel writers and other people, have to have some experience that's positive. You know, it's not just the beautiful the nature of it, which is the true value of where we are. It's wild. That's the value. But you also have that, you know, splash of culture and art. And now it's become a hipster haven where I live.
Right.
Livingston Manor is really, really.
It is. Everybody from Brooklyn is up there
super
now.
hot.
Right. Everybody from Manhattan goes to the
And
Hamptons.
real
So it's like
estate
this
is
every weekend.
through the roof. I mean, it's like you can't buy a house; it's all cash. Just
Yeah.
sounds a little like James Street. I mean, it's my house. I bought for $175,000,
Right.
and fixed it up myself.
Right.
With, you know,
With the help of your
with
brother,
a
maybe?
hand- a
Maybe
little
not
bit
really.
of it, but
We'll talk about the brother later.
you know, right now it's worth 800,000,
It's
maybe
insane.
$1 million.
Yeah.
And that's just so.
Yeah, it's amazing how that's picked up. So what was it, just kind of going back to the Catskill Brewery for a little bit, did you have to train people how many employees does this have, or how do you?
Right. So yeah, I mean, the first thing is find a place. So we found a place right on the edge of town.
Okay.
So it's within walking distance of Main Street, but it's got its own campus.
Got it.
And so we are, you know, by design, a small to medium-sized production brewery. So
Got it.
the idea is to package beer and sell it out into the market in New York State.
Got
And
it. That was the design plan.
that's
And
the
you guys,
design plan.
so I just noticed it, well, you're at, what's it called? Cream? What's it, Sean?
Yeah, the Cream Line.
Cream
so
Line
we just
carries you. and
launched as a
you were-
partnership with Cream Line. We have our own beer garden at Chelsea Market.
Yep, I was there. Yeah, I saw that.
And that's just opened a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're, you know, 150, or, you know, well, we just signed with a distributor in New York City. So
Okay.
now all of a sudden we're everywhere. But the big one was, you know, I got into Yankee Stadium.
Yankee
They
Stadium.
took our, it's called Ball Lightning. It's a great pills. And you know, I snuck my way in to meet with the folks who, you know, cater Yankee Stadium.
Right.
And you know, luckily there was a beer guy that just likes good beer and just drank it. It's like, this is fantastic beer. Why don't we do some craft beer, guys? You know, local craft beer. And I was like, I think that's a great idea. Why don't you also include the Bronx Brewery?
Yeah.
And they're like, that's a great idea. So now there's like each tier of Yankee Stadium, there's a craft beer stand, and it's got Bronx, Brooklyn, and Catskill.
Nice.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
and it's great, and they drink a lot of beer.
At the baseball game? Really? I never thought that.
But COVID killed us, right? You got to imagine. So we're all about producing beer and getting it out to the market, mostly in kegs originally.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as they shut down, as soon as COVID happened, nobody bought a keg of beer at all.
Right. Except for every individual house.
Right.
Because you have nothing else to do.
They don't have keg holders. So we did have to do a major pivot to the cans and packaging.
Got it.
And that was great for us, but we were able to do it quickly. And so
Because you were small, nimble
quadrupled
company.
during COVID because we got into cans.
Wow.
Because everyone was going to the bodegas and the Christie's and buying beer, and they're trying new beer.
Right.
So once we got the packaging done and figured out that you had to get a canning line, you got to train people how to can, you got to get quality control, different equipment. We did that as fast as we could and got out of the market.
So going back to the workers, how many employees do you have? Is it a small?
Yeah, it's 16 people, but
Okay.
we also have. I just bought bought an old, not old, but like a 1990s bread truck from Boston.
Okay.
We turned it into a tricked out food truck.
Okay.
So like completely gorgeous, everything you could possibly want. So it's a Mexican themed food truck called the Catskill food truck.
Oh, very nice.
It's got its home base at the brewery.
Very
So
cool.
there's 10 people there also.
Right.
That's 16. At the brewery at any given time, plus drivers, salespeople, marketing people. So I mean, it's.
And those are all basically local people that you brought in.
The first group, yes.
Okay.
Some of the marketing people and other folks.
As you got bigger, you got.
Yeah, we work with folks.
So I have a question. So Ramsey, what's the line between like getting investors and people to come versus keeping it rustic and wild? Like, how do you walk that line between like, yeah, we want this, but we don't want,
So I'm sorry. So yeah, I just want to repeat the question. So the question is, how do you divide the line between, keeping it authentic, I guess, and rustic, versus how do you expand, or do you want to expand, or how?
or having investors, people come in?
It's a brilliant question, because that is the dance, right? And in order to be valuable and attractive, you need to build your own brand. So we didn't have distributors. We sold all of our own beer and delivered it. We bought delivery trucks, printer vans. We skimmed them up so they said Catskill Brewery, and we drive all around New York City.
Oh, whose phone is this? Sean's?
So that is the ultimate issue. How do you, so when you do that yourself, when you give yourself enough resources to do those things yourself in the beer business, the craft beer business,
Right.
you become a lot more attractive to the big investors
Right.
and to the distributors. So
Yeah.
we are in a position where we don't need outside investment
At this point.
at this point.
Got it.
And the deal that we were able to strike with the distributors is like 30% better, or 50% better than we would have before.
You had.
Because we have tons of clients, a big reputation. We have some leverage,
Got it.
and that's really in the beer distribution business. It's sort of a bit of a racket. It's almost criminal at times. So you want to play that card very carefully. And we have been pretty lucky. We're very careful. We don't sign on anybody.
Got it.
We're not looking for people to throw money at us. And that's because that's a double-edged sword.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So what, just kind of to kind of close things up here a little bit, then before we get into if there's any questions. So what advice do you have for people in terms of like, how do you, what's just kind of in closing, like what's the self-discovery for finding what your passion is? And then, and what advice do you have for quote unquote, just going for
I thought a lot about, when you would ask a question like that. And it's hard because there is the cliches, but they're so true. So I feel embarrassed to say them, but maybe it's worth repeating to the ones that you already know, which
Right.
is that you have to live in the moment and
Okay.
make your decisions based on the reality that's literally right in front of you.
Got it.
You can weigh yourself down with guilt and doubt,
Mhm.
and it's only going to drag you down. I mean, you really have to look at the reality that's right in front of you and look towards the future and make your decisions based on that kind of clarity of thinking. And that's, for me, it manifests itself by being the most positive person in the room, because I'm a cheerleader. That's my job. I make
Right.
people feel good about what they're
That's
doing.
true. Every time around,
I have 16 people at the brewery and 22 at Mountain Keeper. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And when I interact with them, they're all doing what they're doing because they're passionate about it. No one's trying to get rich working at Catskill Mountain Keepers. Right? They're environmentalists.
Right. Yeah.
So I want them to be passionate about their job. So it's stuff like, immediately changing the work structure for them. They
Right.
don't have to, Fridays are off for everybody, and you don't have to
Mhm.
clock in. Those are like, immediately coming out of COVID, pivoting
Right.
and saying, what's good for my colleagues and my partners.
Right.
And again, it's just like, it's taken me a really long time and I'm not there yet, but that idea that you are, you're a much better problem solver, a much better leader if you live in the moment
Uh-huh.
and make your decisions based on what's reality around you and what you are projecting out into the future, rather than letting those mostly negative thoughts about the past bring
Kind
you
of
down.
overwhelmed or take.
Because if I go that direction, I can paralyze myself where I can't get out of bed
Right.
because of the fear of all of
Right.
it. I have
No,
a lot
it's
of
true.
enemies and a lot of stresses and a lot of people that are after me, like oil and gas people. I can get paranoid pretty quick.
Right.
So
It's good to have
that's I think that's the main thing for me, is that it's like, it also helps me enjoy my life.
Right.
Because I'm here only, that I know of right now, and I want to have fun doing it. I'm really having fun sitting here with you talking.
Well, thanks for
And
that.
and I appreciate this.
Thanks. Keely, was there any questions at all from the audience?
We don't have any questions from our audience.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
So you call it cliche. I've never heard it that perspective about how to pursue a passion. That's the cliche. That's all.
Pursue.
You mentioned something in my mind. It was about accepting the reality of that moment. And I'll just use my own words, where your instinct was screaming at you to pursue that opportunity. So I correct me if I'm wrong, but that's essentially what occurred at that moment in time. You're with your friends at a barbecue. I think I heard you say something struck you that, wow, you knew that market, you knew that was missing. Something obviously was appealing to you, because it seems like everything you've done that you described to us was, you were passionate about it, and then something else presented itself a few years later, at the beginning of your career, you pursued that. At that moment in time, what doubts, fears, or what did you have to give up to pursue this new opportunity? There's a lot going on in your life. But going back to that moment.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm just going to repeat the question. So just so I frame it right. So Sean, the question is what did you have to give up to do that, or what did you?
Yeah, what was on the flip side? What was telling you not to do it? What were the thoughts, feelings, naysayers?
So I think you're into something that's pretty interesting to me, because on the one hand, I live my life leaping first and asking questions later, and hopefully not asking a lot of questions, but taking advantage of opportunities, seizing opportunities, taking risks with opportunities that are presented. I pride myself on that, and the payoff has been incredible. That meet people, see things, do things that I would never do if I was more cautious. So I'm really, really brave when it comes to seizing those kinds of opportunities. But at the same rate, the first thing I did is I talked to a brilliant guy named Bill Haney, who is out of Boston. He's a financial wizard and
Right.
a legendary guy and a friend. And I told him what I thought I would want to do. I said, it's a terrible idea. First of all, partnerships always end terribly. If this is going to crash and burn, and I think it's a really bad idea. How much do you know about beer? How much do you know about business? What are you doing? What
Right.
think of the risk? So I got that perspective as I went into it. It made me more thoughtful about the kinds of pitfalls I was going to. And he was right. The partnerships are impossible.
Right.
The business side is super challenging. I'm not a numbers person. But the way I've always done things is I surrounded myself with people who understood those things, and I didn't have to, I didn't have to figure it out. Someone can tell me. I'm not dumb. Someone tells me, I get it. I'm not somebody who can, pour over Excel sheets and figure it out myself.
Got it. So you built the right team.
Yeah, so surrounding yourself with people who, I got one rule, which is I only work with people if I have the ability to decide who I'm working with. People I want to get a phone call from. Whether it's good news or bad news, if that person calls, I want to take the call. And I know when don't want to work with somebody when I'm avoiding that phone. And so surrounding yourself with people.
That's a really good rule of thumb. Only want to work with people that want to get a phone call.
Yeah, because
good or bad.
If it's a problem, you want to problem solve with them. It's fun. It's interesting. It's a problem. Problems have solutions. Let's work together to do it.
Right.
That's good news. Of course, you want to hear it, especially from someone you like. But when you're just like you realize, you don't want to deal with this person. That's a problem. You don't.
Yeah.
And they create problems that headaches that permeate your whole life if you surround yourself with the wrong people. So picking good partners and colleagues, well, we all know that. But sometimes it's not your choice. But if you can, I've had the privilege in the last 20 years to be able to pick everybody I work with. I don't have to work with them. It's fantastic.
There you go. Follow your passion. Well, Ramsay Adams, thank you so much for joining us today on our inaugural Follow Your Passion series here with GoBundance here in New York. Thank you, everybody. Keely, thank you so much for putting this together and allowing us to broadcast to all of our members across the country.
I appreciate it. We do have one question that just popped up. Do you mind staying on for just a minute to answer?
Sure.
All right. The question is, can you talk about the capital raise process a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, there's two different, or multiple ways to tackle that question. This is a capital raise for a brewery. I think that the thing I'd like to say with that prompt is, if you want to have a successful business like a brewery and other businesses in that sector, that's craft beverage, craft cheese, craft, you need to have a 5-year plan to be able to stay in business and pay your employees and pay the expenses and buy new equipment before you're going to see a profit. So basically, you have 5 years of burn before you flip.
That's a big.
And so if you're going to think about how much money you need to crunch those numbers really hard. But basically, that means market penetration. You can't launch a brand and have market penetration, unless something special happens.
Right.
You need to plan for that slow, steady, incremental growth of your brand and brand recognition and getting penetration into the marketplace. The brewery, it's bars, restaurants. And so
number
you
one,
get lucky, you get into Yankee Stadium, and then you get a boost.
Right.
And you do this and that, you get lucky. But if you're gonna, so
number one, it's a 5-year plan.
It's a 5-year plan
For what you're doing. And number two, what was your capital raise? You went to friends and family, or how did you do it?
I did. So because I didn't have the resources to be an equal investing partner at the set, it was my idea, and I put the team together. I had 2 partners who both had resources and were interested in investing, and I went to friends and family and raised my third.
Okay.
And so I essentially was able to carve out a third of a third for myself.
Okay.
With absolutely no capital investment.
Got it.
So,
Which makes sense.
and then I can, grow my share as we move forward on profits I earn if I want.
Got it.
So it's, that's the way we did it, and I think it's a great way. If
Right.
you're somebody who doesn't have, the capital, but you have the idea,
Right.
that's a great model.
That is
Because,
a great one.
if I was able to convince 2 other partners to fully invest, why can't I convince 2 of my friends and family to partially invest?
Right.
And then why can't they bring me along?
Yeah.
Because I'm
Absolutely.
giving them.
This is the
the
one equity
opportunity
that you're putting into the
To
project.
this one equity, and it's paid off in spades for everybody, right? So, that's a model if you're looking for one, if you don't have your own capital to put up. You need a good idea. I mean, that's really, you can raise all the money in the world, but if you don't have a good idea.
Right. Thanks, Ramsey. Anything else, Keely?
That is all.
All right. Well, thanks again,
Thank
Ramsey
you,
Adams, for
thank you.
coming. And
Thank you,
thanks, Keely,
everybody.
for putting this together. And thanks, everybody, for being here in New York. All right. Take care.